this is a demonstration of logic gates that can be created using only the vanilla PeTI editor. This is not a logic gate, it's just a signal. This would be a NOT gate. This is an OR gate. Get the idea. This would be not or actually NOR, I should say. And not and. Let me want to leave all of these on in order to solve the test. Technically, it could be done without actually doing this, but this is an XOR, explicit OR. Works if either of these is enabled, but just not both. And it turns off if they're both off. This is a exclusive NOR, or XNOR, I think is what it's called. Could be wrong about that, but if both, then true. If neither, then true, and otherwise it's false. Now this is, at this point I was just goofing around, but this is a way that you can create a little bit of randomness and timers and things. So all of these are connected up to this funnel, changes direction when one of them is turned off, and that's connected to this, so it gives it a little animation. There's a lot of different things you can do with that basic concept. This is a memory cell. It's not the most compact that I could have done, but it is a demonstration of one way you could create a memory cell. Now this is 2 outputs instead of just 1, or I mean 2 inputs. So depending on you can toggle states by using different buttons. Anyway, that's really it. And then this is hooked up to some stuff with some extra noise or variation things that are connected up just to add a little variation. And that's the chamber. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to show the way that you design each of those. Alright, so here's the map. And when you're creating these logic gates, so what I'll do, as I've mentioned, I sometimes use these when designing vanilla maps. You can totally isolate your logic gate or mechanism from the rest of the test chamber, so the player never has to see it. They don't know what's actually going on behind the scenes. So you can tuck away a lot of this stuff, and I guess it looks kind of impressive when you know that it's just been done with PeTI. So when I create connections to these, usually if I set up like a laser, maybe I connect a button to it, you'll notice that it was on when I connected a button, it turned it off, and now it says the button turns the laser on. What I'll do is I'll set up my equipment, and then I'll make all of the connections, and then I'll go in and change the settings. Because if I don't do that, for example, if I just put one in here and I say, oh, I want it to start enabled, so I set it that way, and then I start creating connections, and it'll change it on me, and I'm like, oh, shoot, I gotta go back and change that. So best to create all of the connections and then just go through and choose what the settings are. So there's nothing special about this. This is just a button connect to a laser. For the NOT gate, we're very simply changing its state to start enabled after making the connection. The OR gate is a little bit more tricky, but all you have to do is create 3 of these lasers. We're going to connect this laser to this laser, or rather this receiver to that laser, and this receiver to that laser. So this is an AND gate right here. And what we do is, after making those connections, set all of them to start enabled. And what that causes is when you when the game is loaded, even though this says start enabled, when the game loads, this is enabled already, so is this one, which means this will be now triggered because both of these are going to become check marks. So that will turn this off. But if a button goes on either of these, then that will disable one of these, and then this will turn on. So that's an OR gate. Over here, to make a not OR, it's the same thing. You just negate this. Instead of this starting enabled, it starts disabled, and the effect is the inverse. And in the case of all of these, to create the inverse logic, you just negate it. So I'll just explain AND and XOR. AND is very simple. You just connect 2 of them up. Start enabled is false, unless you want not AND. Now here, the XOR, I don't know if there's a more efficient way to do this, but the way I approached it was I installed an OR gate and I installed an AND gate, this one right here. This connects to both of these buttons. When both buttons are pushed, this will turn off. So it's actually a not OR, a not AND. So we set it to start enabled. So so this will only turn off if both of these are triggered. And then this is a normal OR gate. As you can see, these are both connected up to this final output here, and this requires both check marks in order to turn on, start disabled. So you trigger this one so that you get this one to turn on, even though it looks on right now. It's just like this one, it's off when you enter the test chamber. So this will be off. Once you put a button on either one of these, this will turn on, and that will mean that this is valid so long as not both. Now here, I already explained how this works. It's just a way that you can go about creating timers and things. This, I didn't show this in the video, but this was put there just to add an extra variance. It doesn't really increase the randomness too much, but what it does is it changes the cycle up a little bit. So I have this connected up to here. Also have it connected up to here to negate how the chamber lock is opened. So that's what all of that is. And it shouldn't be too hard to figure out how this is. So because of the time it takes with the way I built this, I had to bump up the timer to 4 seconds. It works in one direction but not the other, because what would happen is so I've connected this up to this to change the direction, and it would run out of time and it would start going back in the other direction. But either one of these is just set to disable the other one for long enough to remove the ball and bring it back over to this side. And that's all that does. Very simple. This button is connected up to all of these elements, and this button is actually not connected to anything. It could be connected to something if we wanted. Now I'm interested in creating another test chamber, maybe combine these elements, make some new elements, and I could show that one off, create some more interesting designs.